Pastors are people too. I say that with tongue in cheek, but don't many of us place pastors in a category where life is pretty good and they don't face the challenges that we do in the real world? Well, let me tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. Over the last few weeks, I've had the honor to sit with 4 pastors from 2 different churches and 4 different areas of ministry. The first, a lead pastor. The second, a lead pastor who now does pastoral care and has been ordained for over 50 years. The third, a kids, family, and men's pastor. And the fourth, a youth college-age pastor. As I prepared to meet with each of them, my goal was to learn about different areas of ministry, but also to learn what it's like to be a pastor and how each I spoke with was called to the ministry. I'd love to hear people's stories and how God is using them in their lives. And although my curiosity is not limited to just pastors, but anyone who is willing to share their story. And if they are not yet followers of Christ, it provides an opportunity to share the gospel message. I want to focus my time on 3 questions I ask each of them. I was amazed that 4 different pastors from 3 different generations had the same type of response to each of the questions. My first question was, how and when in your life were you called to be a pastor? There are many passages in the Bible that use the word called. Paul often mentioned his calling at the beginning of his letters. For example, in the 1 Corinthians, he said that this letter is from Paul, chosen by the will of God to be an apostle of Christ Jesus. While circumstances varied, each provided a specific time being prayed over by a specific person or multiple persons, who each of those persons felt led by God to share that word. An interesting point is that none of them had any plans or interest in the ministry. And also it took multiple interventions for them to get the message. I guess God had other plans. We know He can be very persistent. The second question was very simple, was what motivates you? What gets you up in the morning to continue to be in the ministry? I expected to hear preaching, teaching, spending one-on-one time with people or leading the church. Well, I was wrong again. The very consistent answer was seeing a person become a follower of Christ and the impact it has on their life. When each of them answered, there was a sense of joy and a smile that came over their face that could not be removed. It reminded me when Jesus in the last days was talking with his disciples in John that he said, I have told you these things so that you will be filled with joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. It demonstrated the unselfishness in each of them, for their joy comes from seeing joy in others. The final question is, what frustrates you the most in being a pastor? While these answers varied from receiving criticism to the ability to separate family life from ministry, when I dug deeper, attempting to get to the issue that frustrates them the most, all came to the same conclusion, was watching a person struggle in their life, yet unwilling to make a change in themselves and refusing to give their heart to Jesus. So these folks continue to carry their burden and all the sadness, despair, and struggles that goes along with it. As in the one question regarding what brings them the most joy, they again place others ahead of themselves. They all sacrifice themselves for the sake of others, just as Jesus did for all of us. For it says in Mark that for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his ransom for others. I did ask one of the pastors how he handled criticism. The quick question early on was terrible. But as time went on, he learned to give it to the Lord. And truthfully, it still gets to him. But he said, I've learned to grow tougher skin without losing a soft heart. That response was so clear. We can all learn from that in our daily lives. Jesus told his disciples in Matthew, look, I'm sending you out as sheep among the wolves. So be shrewd as snakes, but be harmless as doves. So how well do you know your pastors? They are people too, just like you and I, and have the same challenges in life that each of us do. They have families to care for, bills to pay, cars to get repaired, and all the other thrills of life. Yet all these pastors have the same are obedient to their call of servanthood, and all want to do their part in building the kingdom. So pray for your pastors. Get to know them. Let them know how much they are valued. Pastors like us live very busy lives, but I have found that a cup of coffee and a kind word lets them know that they are loved and appreciated.